Hi everyone, I'm here at the Australian Armour and Artillery Museum taking a look at their example of the Panzer IV Ausf.D. Now I did a video on this tank about 4 years ago where I pointed out some of the design highlights. Today I'd like to talk a bit more about its employment and how it was designed. So this is a pretty amazing exhibit they've got here for a few reasons. Firstly, it's one of the very few surviving Panzer IVs, and only 232 of these were made in total. Secondly, this is a running vehicle with a fully restored driveline that uses a representative engine, transmission and steering systems, and was rebuilt by a team in the UK. Now there's a number of Panzer IVs here at the museum from different series, and this is the earliest model that they have. Now I'm a big fan of the Panzer IV. It served for a long time in the German army from start to the end of the war. It was a robust platform, and its chassis had the flexibility to be used for lots of different applications. So it's great to be able to talk about this example today. So how did the design come about? Well, when developing armoured doctrine in the 1930s, the German army identified the need for their fast-moving panzer units to contain their own organic fire support capability to help them neutralise fixed emplacements and dug-in infantry. The types of anti-tank guns that would be carried by most of the vehicles in an armoured unit would be selected based on their ability to fire armoured piercing rounds that are typically not much use for engaging defences and infantry. So the medium tanks would be focused on engaging tanks, and they need to be accompanied by heavy supporting vehicles. These heavier vehicles were to be deployed in one company next to 3 companies of the medium tanks within a tank division. Now in January 1934, the specifications for the heavy support vehicle, the so-called Begleitwagen, were issued, creating requirements for a 24-tonne tank armed with a 7.5cm howitzer. This defined the basic role and capabilities of the Panzer IV. It was to operate in concert with a medium tank equipped with a 3.7cm anti-tank gun for engaging other tanks, and that vehicle was the Panzer III. And so following prototype evaluation of the support vehicle in the mid-1930s, Krupp commenced production in 1936 with the Panzer IV Ausf.D. Now the main gun that was mounted on this variant and the Ausf.D, and all variants up until the F2, was what you see here. It's the short-barreled 7.5cm Kampfwagen Kanone 37 L24. It was manufactured by Krupp. This gun deployed an effective high explosive round for use against hardpoints. It had about 725 grams of high explosive inside, but it also had access to the Panzergranate 39 armor piercing round. This gun round combination could penetrate about 35mm of angled armor at a range of 1,000 meters, which was decent anti-tank performance for the early part of the war. This gun was mainly restricted in its anti-armor capability by the rather low muzzle velocity of the gun, being only about 385 meters per second. And in May 1941 it was decided that the vehicle should be upgunned, resulting in later variants having the 7.5cm Kampfwagen Kanone 40 that had at least double the muzzle velocity, and so those armor-piercing rounds had about 4 times the kinetic energy. So here you can see some of the design elements that were in the Ausf.D. Firstly, they returned to having the stepped front hull plate that brought the driver's position slightly forward so that he could view to the left and the right, and also the reintroduction of the MG34 in the hull that had been eliminated in the Ausf.B. We're also here going to have a look into the radio operator's position, so you can see the rear of the MG34 there, which is in the position for the radio operator to use. So in July 1938, the German High Command placed an order for 200 Ausf.D vehicles. They were produced by Krupp Grusenwerk in Magdeburg, and that firm had made all Panzer IV tanks up until that time, and they continued in sole production until the Ausf.E. After that point, other firms started to get involved in production. They were all made between October 1939 and October 1940, 232 units in total, and production went up from about 13 units per month to ultimately result in 20 units per month. So here we're looking into the right-hand hatch of the turret. You can see the breech there of the Kampfwagen Kanone 37. This is the loader's working area, so there's an opening in the recoil guard to let him access the rear of the gun. Pulling back and looking up, here's the commander's cupola that's set quite a way back in the Panzer IV Ausf.D, like with the earlier iterations. With later iterations of the tank, that cupola was pushed further forward so that it didn't have to be integrated with both the top and the rear of the turret with that complex manufacturing condition you can see there. And also later iterations added a basket back in that part of the tank for external stowage. So just here you can see the horizontal muffler and exhaust for the Panzer IV. That stayed almost unchanged until the very late marks when they went for vertical flame suppressing exhausts. But back here is where the engine was installed. The Maybach HL120 TRM engine went into the Panzer IV Ausf.D. This was Maybach's 12-litre high output V12 engine with a dry sump, generated about 195 kilowatts of power. And so power to the front drive sprockets was via a drive shaft running forward under the crew compartment to mate up with the transmission and the final drive at the front. And it could move this 20-tonne vehicle along at about 42 kilometers per hour on very good roads and about 25 kilometers per hour cross country. So here you can see the parts of the suspension at the rear of the vehicle. You can see the last rubber road wheels there, along with the rear idler wheels. and the track tensioning mechanism that was done here at the rear of the vehicle. So the suspension on the Panzer IV was a setup of bogies with leaf springs. So you had 4 bogies per side, and each bogie was fitted with 2 double road wheels, and then there was leaf springs used to suspend those road wheels. In the Panzer IV Ausf.D, they added bump stops to each bogie to stop the leaf springs from deflecting too far. There was 4 upper road wheels to assist with returning the track to the front of the tank, and the Ausf.D had 38 centimeter wide tracks. So back here we see the rear deck with all the exhaust and air inlets. Down on the side there, you'll see the grille shutters where you could draw air into the engine, and then you can see the hatch for the gunner. And in a minute we'll go in and take a look into that position. So being a German tank, the gunner's position is on the left, and we'll look in there and see the working area at the rear of the Kampfwagen Kanone 37. So there you can see the recoil guard, and that's where the sighting mechanism as well as the traverse and elevation controls were for the gunner. Now, in terms of armour protection, the Panzer IV Ausf.D at the start of production had 30mm of armour on the upper hull front and 30mm on the front of the turret. Based on learnings during the Battle of France, this was increased during production by the use of applique or Panzer that added an extra 30mm to the front of the hull and an extra 20mm to the turret armour. And though this example doesn't include those modifications, there is another example of a Panzer IV here at the museum that does. So the Panzer IV Ausf.D was first used in May 1940 during the invasion of the West, and around 280 Panzer IVs of various types were used during that campaign. In France, it was shown to have some disadvantages in terms of armour protection, but it had some clear superiority in terms of how it was employed, the way it used radios to coordinate attacks, and the workload balanced amongst the crew. It was also used by the Deutsche Afrika Korps in the desert in 1941, and more were added in 1942, and it was also part of the forces that formed the German armoured units that were used in Operation Barbarossa. So that's all I want to say about the Panzer IV Ausf.D here at the Australian Armour and Artillery Museum. I want to thank you for getting to the end of the video and listening to me bang on about this tank. I look forward to talking to you soon about another armoured vehicle, and until then I hope you stay well. Thank you.